Welcome back to the Astrocartography channel. This video will be a little different than some others. I'm actually going to be doing a full reading for everyone to see. I'm Kim Mott, and welcome to my Astrocartography playlist. This will be a unique video because I'm actually meeting with a client here, Kelly. She's graciously volunteered to show us her chart. I'm going to hide her personal data, but we'll be able to see Kelly's birth chart and her astrocartography map. And we're going to do an actual reading just like I would with a client who books online. And just so you can see an example of how thorough it is, what goes on, and it's more than just lines on a map. Kelly, thank you so much for coming on the channel.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear what you have to share. This is great.
Awesome. And full disclosure, normally when clients book me, it's either, a referral from somebody that I've done a reading with before, or they're booking online, and we're usually complete strangers. But Kelly and I have been following each other over on Threads. I'm Kim Goes There over on Threads. What's your handle on Threads, Kelly?
Indigo Bone on Threads.
Indigo
Yep.
Bone, we'll see it on the screen. So we've been following each other since sometime last year, and I'll have some knowledge about your personality and some of your life events because Kelly's a Gemini sun and likes to post information and share. She's very open. So normally I wouldn't have any background info on somebody. So when I kind of read the birth chart, I'm going to say things that I notice, and some of them may, also coincide with things I know, but I'll let you know.
Mhm.
Cool. Okay. So usually before we get started, I ask the client if they want to record the session and we get a transcript generated. We're already recording here, so I'll skip that part. But what I'll do is I'll start by sharing a program. I use two different programs for readings, and one is called AstroGold. I'm on a Mac, so there's a manufacturer, whatever you call it, a software designer out of Australia that made this. It's run by a woman, so it's nice and pretty. And this will be your chart and whole sign, Kelly. I think you're
Mhm.
deeply familiar with that. Some people might be confused by that. Usually all the software and the websites are going to default to Placidus because that was what was popular when those things were being created. The whole sign I use for astrocartography specifically because I find it's much more accurate for predicting circumstances.
Mm.
How things might actually play out in life. So when I'm looking at your map and I'm like, well, how might this happen and how might that happen? I kind of want it to be circumstances versus like the subtleties of, the human psyche or something like that. So of course, the first thing that we see here in your chart is that you have the sun in Gemini up in the 10th house. Of course, you're familiar, but people watching may not be familiar that each of these little wedges here, 1 through 12 going counterclockwise, are called the houses of the zodiac. So they're representing little slices of when you look at the sky, what we call the ecliptic window, which is the constellations of the zodiac. They're all divided. In this system, they're divided into 30 degrees each. So each of these houses represents topic areas of life. And they cover kind of everything you might experience over a lifetime. Your sun being the 10th house, and I'll kind of do a quick house tour just for people watching, is public life and career and social standing and just how you receive recognition out in the world. Whereas when we get over there, we'll talk about the 4th house being private life and your inner self and things we can't see about you versus what's
Mhm.
public display, kind of like we're doing right now, putting you on public display. It's a very good demonstration of that placement. It's also conjunct the midheaven. I'm going to say things, I'm going to say jargon, and then I'll kind of re-explain it a little bit for people watching. Because when I have clients, sometimes they only know their sun sign. They don't even know they have other signs or a wheel like this or anything.
Mm.
The other thing we're looking at is your Virgo moon. That's sitting in the 1st house, the house of you. It's co-present here with the ascendant, also in Virgo. So your Virgo rising, Virgo moon, and your Gemini sun. Big three, we call it.
Mhm.
And so, like I said, I'll do this house tour, but when people are looking at this, and you can chime in too, Kelly, because I know you've studied astrology.
Sure.
The way I like to look at this is like if you do one of those little Polaroid snapshots, it's like a frozen moment in time at the exact moment and location of your birth. So I like to
Mm.
think of it as space-time, you can't separate the two. And so that space-time moment of where everything was located in the zodiac is how this is configured. And this horizontal line here across is representing the horizon. So all the planets that are up above the horizon were actually like visible in the sky. And you're kind of just after midday. And then we've got the below the horizon. So after sunset over here, this is sunset on this left side here is the eastern horizon, sunrise. The sun moves this way, goes down below the horizon into the underworld. So that gets to the dark, the things we can't see. It's below the horizon, below the earth, but it's still hanging out down there in space. And since your sun is up in the day part of the chart, or above the horizon, we call it a day chart. If it's been, placed down here in the underworld, we would call it a night chart or nocturnal chart. So your diurnal, you'll have a day chart. I'm sure you're familiar with that. But that will mean that, Jupiter might be your luckiest, kind of most fortunate planet. And then, Saturn is the malefic, the one that doesn't give all the rewards. But usually it's your out of sect malefic that'll actually give you the most trouble. So maybe Mars would be like the most challenging for you. So when we move this all over to the map, we're going to keep an eye on that kind of stuff too. Like Mars comes into play for sure. So very quick house tour. You're familiar already, but if you have any things to check in, feel free, Kelli.
That's great. No, thanks.
I should also mention, I am going to just talk and talk and talk and download all this information to you. But if you want me to stop and explain something more, you have a question, or when we get to the map, you just like want to check out another place that we're nearby or something, I'm happy to do that. I won't be offended if you just interrupt me.
Okay, sounds great.
I'll be happy. So Virgo is your first house. And so these little, symbols around the outer edge for people who aren't familiar are the signs of the zodiac. Each one gets these little symbols. Like I said, the houses are topic areas of life, things you would experience over a lifetime. The planets and the planetary bodies and these little mathematical things are actually like the energies that get expressed through those topic areas of life. The sign is like the host vibe. So I like to say, like, if you, were growing up as a kid and you went over to your friend's house, it was like the strict house and you only did homework there and you had to like do your proper like manners and everything. That would be one vibe. You go to the other house and it's like the party house and they have like a pool table and like a trampoline or whatever. You've got like the different signs are kind of hosting the vibe of the house. And depending on the time and location, that spins. It's like your own little personal Rubik's Cube. It spins on the outer edge here, and then the planets land at the different degrees. But the houses stay fixed. So what's cool is when we get to the map, we can see relocated charts in different locations. We could see what it would be like if you had been born in China or if you had been born in France or something like that. All your planets would stay on the same degrees, but the signs will spin and then those planets will move and relocate to other houses. And that becomes like a permanent transit or how your energy would be expressed in that location. With Virgo rising, you're probably, a lot of Virgo rising, especially Virgo moon, because you have both of those. So you're like a double whammy with the Virgo. Virgo is like, loves to be of service to people. It's known for being like the ducks in a row, organized one. But sometimes I'll notice, especially with Virgo moon, younger in life, it's like the opposite of that. It might be like the messy person or something at first, and then those Virgo traits really start to settle in. But it's like more of the detail oriented, able to like organize things. It's like the dead mom or whatever. But yeah, it definitely loves to be of service to others. And the ascendant itself is your personality, kind of how we experience you. I think of it kind of as like the auric field. So when you kind of walk, it's your vibe. And then the moon being your inside self, your emotions, your instincts, your intuition, your subconscious mind. And also like your body as far as it holding your subconscious and your memory and things like that. The sun up here is being more like your will and your vitality. And I think of it as spirit, where I kind of think of moon as like more like soul. So that's kind of how I look at it. The first house is house of you. It's the only one that is just you. And all of these houses that oppose each other have similar topic areas. So this is the house of you. Seventh house, when looking right across the wheel, is house of other people, like important relationships. The second house is material resources, what you have to work with financially, things you own. But the underlying theme of that house is values and our value system and even how we value ourselves. So like self-esteem. So we'll talk about that a little bit more with your chart. because you do have two power packed planets in there, outer planets. And also in your notes, when people, book a reading, there's a little section of putting notes. What are your goals? What would you like to do with this energy and kind of what you want to learn from this reading? And you had kind of highlighted that you were interested in like financial abundance, but also
Hmm.
like friendship and social like connections and networking, but also romance and love and things like that, which is interesting
Yeah.
because the ruler, the planet in charge of the sign of Libra, each sign gets a planet in charge of it. Call it the ruler. The ruler of Libra is Venus, as you know. So Venus actually covers all those topic areas in a lot of different ways. So you're getting like a triple hitter there. There are other things that can indicate abundance, including what's going on with these planets. But in general, it's that house values ruled by Venus, which is kind of nice because Venus is really at home in that house, and it would be in domicile. So Libra being very much about like balance and harmony and relating to others. When I look at the second house, not only what that sign is and what planets are there, I also look where the ruler lives. So you have this vibe of like when I see like the Libra there and how you can make money, it's definitely that give and take of like how to relate to other people. So like working with clients, the like sort of diplomatic energy. It can also be
Mm.
beauty things. So like aesthetics, decorating, like literally the beauty industry, the arts, things like that. Um, it's kind of interesting because you also have, like I said, Venus over in the eighth house, which isn't those things. The eighth house is I call the deep house. That's the the one where we have to like dig to the bottom to discover the deeper truths. It's psychology, it's sexuality, it even rules archaeology because you have to dig down below to get
Oh,
to.
I didn't realize that. I didn't know it ruled archaeology.
Yeah, and it's like it's all those kind of like less apparent things you have to dig a little deeper. Um,
Huh.
and it includes like esoteric topics and the occult because
Yes.
those aren't things that are handed to you in school necessarily. You've got to like seek them out, uncover them, and dive in. So for you, especially, and I noticed from your threads that you're like getting into the realm, I noticed of probably starting to take clients pretty soon. And I think that's
Yeah.
really, really astrologically supported there.
Mm.
You have, astrology could be covered there and, your ruler there. Then we've got Pluto and Uranus in the second. So to me, this shows probably a lot of like with Uranus there, it could be up and down, or sudden changes and just kind of a little bit of erratic. It's,
Yeah.
we think of that planet Uranus, it's like on its side, doing its own thing with its, it's definitely, I call him the mad scientist. It's like 1.21 gigawatts. It likes to do it crazy, very independent, very like authentic to itself, but it's the one of just being not necessarily the most stable energy.
Right.
Thing about it though is it also in modern terms is kind of the ruler of metaphysics as well. So that ties really well into that eighth house
Mm.
where your ruler is. And then the Libra being there is the Libra Pluto being there is like it's also the planet of transformation and like changing and things. So it's almost like over the lifetime, there's probably been, especially since it's a slow planet, there'll be like this huge metamorphosis of even your values and like
Yeah.
what your personal values are and even how you value yourself. So it kind of has this like upheaval vibe, your second house.
Yep.
But since the modern ruler of the eighth house, I mean, of like Scorpio, which is at home in the eighth house, is, Pluto. So I really
Mm.
feel like these two, not only because they're opposing each other and related, that way, um, but because of those planets being there, it's like very much an eighth house vibe as far as how to get. And I know you've, had ups and downs too. You've mentioned it on your threads, but like,
Yeah.
you know, success in one area, and we'll talk about your North Node and things like that, but like this could be more in that North Node realm,
Mm.
with those deeper kind of hidden occulty topics and things like that. Okay, so we're gonna keep going on the house tour, but the third house, being in Scorpio, and third house being intellect and thinking and how we process information, it's communications of all kinds. So like writing, learning, teaching, marketing, literally everything to do with communications.
Mm,
It's also nearby things. So for travel, it's short trips. It can be commutes or road trips, things like that. It's nearby neighbors and acquaintances, and it's also
mm,
siblings. So each of these houses covers lots of topics to get the job done over a lifetime. Um, and with that in Scorpio, that kind of gives a deep thinker.
mhm,
Scorpio is very much in that mindset of that deep house stuff and the kind of Pluto that we talked about. Pluto is the modern ruler, the ancient ruler is Mars, likes to big things up. That's why it likes to be at home in the eighth as well. Um, so it's like a kind of a penetrating mind, probably being able to like cut to the chase. Maybe a little skeptical too, just with
mhm.
not necessarily the feeling nature. It's more just like how others might be communicating or something. You may not like small talk with that couple.
Right. 100%. We are on track today. Also, I love hearing your verbiage because I'm taking notes because you've said like a couple of really great, like, I don't know, it's very nice to hear someone else consolidate and explain. So I've only had one other kind of birth chart reading, and it wasn't geared toward a specific area like this. So I haven't really, I mean, of course, I've listened to tons of astrologers, but not do like this very specific personal. So this is great, Kim. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like we call it like chart blindness for your own chart. And
Yeah,
like the best astrologer in the world likes to get readings from other astrologers just
for
because
sure.
there is like chart blindness is real. Like when I look at my chart, it's harder for me to interpret that than anybody else's chart because I'm more objective with other people. And my chart, it's like subjective and it's related to memories and feelings and like all kinds of or wants and needs. Like
Yeah,
so it's always really helpful to get a second pair of astrologer eyes on your own chart.
for sure.
Um, then we've got the fourth house. The fourth house, like I said, is opposing the 10th. So that 10th house being public life, career, social recognition, that kind of stuff. Fourth house and the IC is your inner self, your inner foundations, that kind of thing. I'm going to get back to the fourth house, but I just kind of realized I didn't talk too much about the angles yet. So remember we talked about your rising sign, the ascendant, your MC, the career. The descendant is other people, important relationships, and the IC is that inner self, the inner foundation.
Mhm.
Latin phrase meaning the bottom of heaven. So up here is the top of heaven, the midheaven, the top of the ecliptic in the sky, and then we've got the bottom of the ecliptic at the IC. So I'm gonna keep harping on those angles because that's what your astrocartography map is tethered to. That's anchored in
Mm,
angles.
okay.
So the four angles of the chart, the ascendant, midheaven, descendant, and IC, are like the most sensitive, potent parts of the chart. So when you have planets on one of those angles, on one of
Yeah.
those, those that I just mentioned, it means that planet is like constantly active. It's constantly getting a power source from that potent part of the chart. And you
Mm,
have three angular planets. So that's already a lot. It's like you've got, so when we look at the map and we go to these lines, I'll show visuals about this in a bit, but we're making those planets on an angle because we're
yeah.
relocating. So at the time and place of your birth, you came out with three angular planets already. So sometimes in the case of that, with clients who have a lot of angularity, I'll actually sometimes if I'm getting off the lines, like take a little aesthetic
Take
break,
a break from the lines.
Get off the line.
You said that, and everything inside me was like, that sounds like a good idea, Kim. Sounds like what I
Yeah.
need to do.
The more is always better. Sometimes more is more. So yeah, so
Yeah.
a little bit about that as well. Or sometimes we'll talk about like flipping the chart and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, or if you can't travel or you can't relocate, we can talk about remote activations so that you can kind of get some things that harmonize with your angular planets, just completely remotely. So I'll talk more about that later. Okay, back to the fourth house. The fourth house and the IC, like I said, you have the planet Neptune angular. So it's within 3 degrees. You can see you have Neptune at 8 degrees Sagittarius, and your IC, that bottom of heaven, is at 5 degrees Sagittarius. This is the little symbol for Sagittarius here. First of all, in the sign of Sagittarius, that's more about like global scale thinking versus, Gemini here, that's like more about the nearby things and communicating. This is like foreign cultures, how you can relate to foreign cultures or the longer journeys. It's a very like spiritual sign as well. It wants to seek out the deeper meaning in life. So that's definitely probably a vibe within your inner core. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and with Neptune there, maybe family was that way too, or the way you grew up, because that can show maybe the conditions of the early home life. Uh,
Yep.
it could have been a little bit of a foggy confusion for you though, just because of that conjunction there. It kind of makes like Neptune is it can be confusion and like fogginess and haziness, because it's in that dream realm. It's in the
Mm-hmm.
spiritual realm. It's the one that wants to dissolve boundaries. When we get over to like Saturn draws lines and makes boundaries. Neptune just wants to be at one with all that is, that kind of thing. Uh,
Yeah.
the deep spirituality within the inner core, but it may have taken you a little while to, or you're like reassessing all the time because you're constantly probably transforming your own values, with that
Right.
Pluto there. Yeah, or there also could have been with family, like some kind of issue around the idea of spirituality, or even substances or mental illness or things like that,
Mm-hmm.
in that early home life. So then
Yep.
we'll have the North Node there. The North Node is the head of the dragon. The South Node, which is always the opposite, or opposing that across the zodiac, is the South Node, the tail of the dragon. The way I
Mm-hmm.
look at those, there's different ways that different astrologers like to delineate this, but I like to think of it as the tail is like what you came into this lifetime already knowing. You don't
Mm.
have to learn or develop certain talents or traits and things like that. Like Mozart just came out like playing the piano when he was like,
Yeah.
oh, that kind of thing, where the things that you just naturally like may even take for granted that you are talented with. Uh,
Mm.
and then the North Node is things you're developing and learning over the lifetime. So even that like kind of global scale thinking, or even the optimistic thinking, because the ruler of Sagittarius, like I said, every sign has one planet in charge of it, is Jupiter. And that's an optimism planet and a luck and opportunity. So even just developing maybe that mindset of like
Mm.
expansive thinking and optimism is something that really has developed slowly over the lifetime
Mm.
and will
That is
continue.
great.
Yeah, it will continue that way. Sometimes too, when I see like a North Node co-present with a Sagittarius, I see someone will at least spend a lot of time overseas, or eventually at some point, if not already, have lived in another country, like a foreign culture at some point. Uh,
Yep.
I see can, like I say, it also represents your house, like where you live. Um, and the other thing it can represent is ancestry. So sometimes on people's map, we'll even see their ancestry and IC lines, which is interesting. Um, and then the other thing to think about for that, is just like when we see those IC lines, those can be wonderfully comfortable places. But sometimes with Neptune on the IC, which we'll see on your map, which is in range of where you're living now and where you were born, uh,
Yep.
can be like those things that I was talking about in early life. It's like stays active. Remember how I was saying when a planet is on an angle, it just stays active. So that fog or that confusion or feeling almost like directionless, sometimes real estate problems, or deception, because Neptune is deception and illusion. So sometimes people will like, do that. Or sometimes, and I can't even count the number of times, it's actually been a lot of times, people will tell me that they've joined cults on that line.
Mm.
I have one lady who was so funny. She was like, "Oh, I love that cult. That was so fun." So it's not
Yeah.
necessarily like it, but it's definitely, or it's a spiritual community or some kind of spiritual map. Then you also have the law of fortune there. This is a math point. It's not a planetary body or anything. It's just a mathematical thing that's
Mm-hmm.
projecting the distance between the sun and the moon from the ascendant. So that ends up being somewhere, in life where we could receive like just a feeling of great joy. It can be a place to optionally build wealth if you really activate that. There's
Mm.
other things that come into play with like zodiacal releasing, which is a timing technique and things like that. But
Yeah.
for this usage in astrocartography, I put it on so we can see it on the map. And
Mm.
usually what I hear from clients is they say that they really find this place benevolent when they are on a lot of fortune line. Uh,
Oh.
they feel like the place likes them. They feel supported by the place and it brings them joy. This location will bring joy. Some
Mm,
that there are hard aspects to that. It won't be instant, like it's some kind of challenge to resolve first. Um,
yeah.
so, when we look at all your aspects, we'll look at that a little bit because you have some of your lucky planets have some hard aspects to them. So even,
Right.
what I mean, so it's like we'll talk a little bit about that more and what to do about it because even where you are now, you're very close to the Jupiter line, but you've got hard aspects to like your nodes and things. So now we're getting, so anyway, those lot of fortune lines can be really interesting. We'll look
Mm,
at them on the map. And then the fifth house is the fun one, in my opinion. It's the house of literally pleasure. It's how we, have like experiences of romance and fun, and it can even be like sexual pleasure, like all kinds of pleasure. It can be hobbies. It can be your creativity. So it's the house of creativity. Like the ancient Greeks considered offspring to either be artistic offspring or kids. So it's the house of
mhm.
children and offspring of all kinds. So if you made a sculpture of the David, they considered that one of your offspring as well.
Yeah.
Uh, so you have that one in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is kind of like the serious one. It's ruled by the planet Saturn. So it is like ambitious. Sometimes it can be a little challenging because it doesn't you know how Sagittarius is like optimistic and there's like opportunities and luck. The Saturn ruled sign of Capricorn is like slow and steady wins the race after meeting all these challenges and like that
Mm,
kind of thing. So it could either be that your children have like that kind of a vibe, they have something that's really more of like a late bloomer energy, or even for you with your own creativity and the feelings of romance and even just having the opportunities for pleasure, can even come through weirdly like hard work.
mhm.
Then we've got, and whenever you see these empty houses, it doesn't mean they remain empty forever. This is again just that snapshot. So as planets are transiting through, like if you had been born a week later, the planets would have been here instead of the inner ring, or
Yeah.
that everything's moving still out in the sky. So like if we go to now, the planets are like this in relationship to your chart. So you can see as
Mm,
things like go through and start transiting that fifth house, that's how things get lit up in those empty houses.
mhm.
So sometimes people freak out when they see that, and then I'm like, don't worry, it's gonna get activated. It's just time. It's not just constantly active like your Neptune. Uh,
Yeah.
so the sixth house is less fun than the fifth. It's health, injury, illness. It's the house of health.
Mhm.
It's also the house of like daily routine and daily work. So we're gonna get up here and talk about career, but how you get the career done on a daily basis comes through the sixth house.
Mm,
So the house of like service to others, and it's the house of subordination. So like you as an employee, or if you ever hire employees, there may be a bit of an Aquarius bent to it. It actually supports like remote working for me. I see a lot of people have really successful remote work situations with Aquarius being the ruler of their sixth house,
mm.
around the cusp of their sixth house. And so like what's funny is it's also the house of pets because pets are considered subordinates instead of children, even though we
Ah.
call them fur babies or whatever. Um, and so even pets might have these like quirky Aquarius characteristics that are like
My dog is an Aquarius, Kim.
that's on the nose.
He was born February 15th last
That's
year. He is
so
literally, I literally have an Aquarius dog. Isn't that
and
funny?
is he super Aquarian? Like is he
Oh
like
yeah. Yeah, and his moon is in Taurus, so we've just got a bunch of fixed energy going on. Thankfully he's a cancer rising, but my goodness.
wow.
He's
So
got a
yeah,
will. He's got a strong will and he's
emotional,
quirky.
bougie,
Yeah.
and zany. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So yeah, but sometimes when either Uranus is in the sixth or you have Aquarius, as the sixth house sign, it can be this vibe of like, even though you're Virgo rising and have the Virgo moon and probably like the ducks in a row and want that, the work probably gets done like with flashes of inspiration and like kind of just
Mm,
it looks erratic from the outside, but if you actually follow that vibe and do it, it actually is probably the most efficient way to get the work done. Or you might always
mm,
think up with futuristic ways to get things done, like improving on it based on like some kind of innovation or something like that. How to be more efficient. Let me think of this new process or something like that. Particularly with the Virgo rising liking to be very efficient as well. I think that, you almost have an ability to think up new ways to be efficient with that placement. Seventh house is the house of others. Like I said, this is you over here, the first. Over here is nearby neighbors, acquaintances, siblings. The seventh house is more like important relationships. You have some kind of commitment level. So fifth house can be dating and romance and things like that. But the seventh is like, I love you. Let's move in together. Let's get engaged. Let's get married. Or partnerships of all kinds. So like business partnerships. It could be like important clients, those kind of things, and also besties. So having your descendant, which always is in the seventh house, in the sign of Pisces, can be like making you a Pisces magnet. You probably attract a lot of Pisces type people, starving artists, spiritual people, like the self-sacrificers, that kind of thing. But definitely in the realm of like spirituality and imagination and the arts and things like that for sure.
Yeah, the person I talk to most on the phone is my goddaughter. She's like family to me. She could be my own child, but she's 20 years younger than me, and she's got a Pisces stellium. Her son is in Pisces, so
Oh,
that is
yeah.
very accurate.
Yeah, that tracks for sure. Well, and then you may also seek a partner with those kind of traits as well. That you have like a deep spiritual connection with, that kind of thing. You do have this like loose conjunction with Jupiter on the descendant as well. So, there can be like there could be two ways that it goes. It could be because also the ancient ruler of Pisces in ancient astrology is Jupiter, so it's in its home sign there. The modern ruler is this Neptune down here.
Yeah.
So, sometimes with Pisces like that, it can bring in people who we like idealize, or there's some kind of illusion about them, and then the
Yep.
illusion kind of fades and we're like left with it. But there's some kind of like I say, optimism or something about that, or some kind of weird like benefit that either comes through those people, or you're also giving them your luck. So it can go either way. Like you can recognize these traits in yourself, or you can recognize them in others. Either way, they're in your chart. But definitely I would think that the spiritual connection would be a big draw for you and who you eyes towards you. This can also, like I say, with the same with Neptune, be some substance situations sometimes.
Yeah.
So that can be, the type of person that gets attracted in as well. But in general, like if you really will talk about like because you have this conjunct, but then Jupiter is also having some hard aspects to the other angles. So when we talk about Jupiter, really kind of working on resolving those aspects can also like help you wield that energy in a way that you bring in the more positive side of Jupiter and Pisces versus maybe like expanding the issues on the lesser, like less fun expressions of Pisces.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll look at that on the map because that shows up pretty prominently on your map. So eighth house, like we already kind of talked about eighth house. It's those deep things. It's it's also shared resources. So down here is your money. Up here is shared money. And also other people's money in general. So whether it's like inheritances, or it could be royalties, it can be investments, things like that. You'd have Chiron there. So I feel like there's some kind of wounding in that house area of all that we talked about, the psychology, sexuality, shared resources. It's the dark night of the soul house. It's the one that does the death and rebirth. So that probably would have been experienced at some point. And it's in the sign of Aries. So maybe it's even where you have a little bit of temper as well, or something that pisses you off in the realm of like shared resources. But Aries is like very action oriented energy. So, your love nature, because you have Venus here, is probably really on that action oriented. We've been talking about Venus and Aries for a lot lately just because of the trends, but this is like a very ardent type of romanticism. And it's also maybe like loving the big grand gestures, because Aries is like, like big actions and things like that. But Chiron being the wounded healer, it's a wound that doesn't really heal. it's represented by the centaur Chiron in mythology. Whenever you see centaur imagery, it's about integrating. So it's something that, you know, and you also have some aspects to Chiron here. You have, you know, it's conjunct that Venus. So there's something about the romance that might have brought some wound, but it's also that problem of Mars because it's squaring Mars, and then it's opposing Uranus. So there's like a sudden or an erratic vibe to it. And then there's the square to Mars. So there's some almost like either anger or violence or something like that could be part of the wound as well. So as a wounded healer, that's actually as you integrate that energy over the lifetime where you can become a mentor or a teacher or a healer yourself in those same areas. You might attract the right people to you to help them integrate their own wound in that same kind of genre. So then the ninth house is, and by the way, we'll see Chiron lines on the map too. And sometimes you'll see like people will have had their wound experience happen on that line. It's kind of uncanny. Then we've got the ninth house in Taurus. Taurus, I call it the bougie sign. It's the one who likes the finer things in life, and it's the foodie sign, and likes to sleep in under the covers, and it's a little stubborn and that kind of thing. So all the topic areas of the ninth house would sort of be, remember I was saying like the host of the house is that. And you know, the ninth house normally like loves to be in that Sagittarius realm that we were talking about. So it's foreign cultures, long journeys, that kind of thing. You have your law of spirit there in the ninth. So the law of spirit can, particularly on the map, like it can signify a bunch of different things, but for me, it's like an integration of the big three, because it's another point about the sun, moon, and rising coming together. So it's just going from the other way. So you can see your law of fortunes down here, your law of spirits here. So, but what I hear the most from clients about their spirit lines is they'll have like some profound experience there, whether it's spiritual or just feeling themselves like, I feel very authentic. They'll have some kind of really great connection to that place that like stands out in their memory. And so, you know, if you're on like astro.com or one of the free websites, you can't see these lines. So then they get surprised and they're like, what is that line? You know, and then they're like, I had this like amazing experience in that place. So it's kind of, that's what I hear the most about the spirit line. So I like to include that one as well. But the ninth house likes to take the third house topics as far as they can go. So third house, you write the book, ninth house publishes it. You know, down here you're learning, up here you're teaching or you're doing higher learning. In ancient astrology, third house was like rituals. It's the house of the goddess. Up here is the house of God. And so it's kind of like connection to higher self or taking those rituals and doing philosophy or spirituality, religion, that kind of thing. And like I said, higher learning, or even just connecting to higher self. So in that kind of earth sign, Taurus, those can actually be some interesting ways to activate that ninth house and the law of spirit. The 10th is pretty straightforward. We already talked about it a little bit, but it's public life. It's all the public things, the things that happen out when everyone is watching, like using YouTube, but also like with career. So the midheaven represents career. You have that within 2 degrees of your sun. So 5 degrees Gemini and 7 degrees. Those guys they're hugging. They got their arm around each other, meaning that the sun is very active through the whole lifetime. You know, sometimes if somebody had like their sun in the 12th, it's very hidden throughout the lifetime, but we'll talk about that because you have your 12th house in Leo. So, you know, it's got a visibility vibe, but interestingly, and a lot of times I'll see people who like either get famous or they're very well known in their own community with that placement, the sun and the 10th, particularly conjunct in heaven like that. But interestingly, you have the south node there. So remember I was saying that's the things you came from, and then you're moving toward it. So it's like as the life progresses, it's about getting more private, and that's actually going to activate the 10th house more somehow. So instead of like wanting to be, you know, center stage, it's definitely a vibe of like developing this like deep inner foundation, and probably like I wrote down a note. What did I put down about that? I put like inner self-worth. When you're developing inner self-worth, that's really gonna because you have this opposition between Neptune and the sun, meaning they're almost exactly 180 degrees apart. They're staring each other
Yeah.
down, right? I like to think of this because this is a 2D representation, but if we think of it as like a yurt, and then the yurt has all these walls where these wedges are formed. Some planets can't see each other because it's like the wall is in the way. So like
Yeah.
Jupiter and Venus can't really see each other, but Jupiter, can easily see the moon because he's basically opposing the moon. And then you've got the sun
Yes.
staring down the barrel of Neptune's eyes, like just like, so that's a 180 opposition. And usually I think of that as a tug of war, like each one wants to do their energy that they're pulling on each other. And so
Mm.
that's cool, in a cool way for astrocartography is on the map, those show up together. Oppositions mean that the lines are actually very close to each other. So,
Oh, I've seen that, but I didn't understand it. Okay, so that's great. Thank you.
yeah,
I was
so
like, what is that
conjunctions will do
about?
that. Yeah, conjunctions do that, but then also like the oppositions, they end up right next to each
Cool,
other.
too.
Those
Yeah.
locations they'll, if you're not aware of it, they'll bring up just, you're magnetizing it at yourself and it's just coming at you. Once you're aware of it,
Ooh.
become Doctor Strange and turn it into an orb and wield it, like I'm not saying
Yeah.
nothing bad will ever happen to you again or something, but it's more like using that energy because you're in that energy field, versus it just coming at you kind of vibe.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then with the sun, opposite the moon, it can be, especially because it's on the IC, it can be like family misunderstandings or like kind of like a fogginess around that or deception, even things like that. But in general, and that kind of gives that aimless vibe because the sun is like your will and destiny and that kind of thing. But
Yes.
those two together, especially on the map and like working with that energy, it can actually, I think of it as like tying a bow with that tug of war rope instead of pulling.
Mm.
Um, so then we've got the 11th house. The 11th house is another fun one. It's opposing the fifth house of pleasure. It's the house of dreams and aspirations and groups of people. So down here is the acquaintances, nearby neighbors, siblings. Seventh house, important partnerships of all kinds. 11th house is groups. So like clubs that
Mm-hmm.
you're going, if you go to like some spiritual group or a church or a class or any kind of gathering, sometimes you'll see like people with a bunch of Aquarius stuff there, they'll be activists. So, you've got a buildup here of a small stellium. You've got Mercury, you have Saturn, and you have Mars, all in the sign of Cancer. So remember how I was saying the two malefics, the planets that are the most challenging, they're both sitting in that kind of aspirations and dreams, and also in the groups. So there was, there's probably that because you also have Mercury at 0 degrees right on the edge
Mm-hmm.
there of that. So it's almost like peeking over the edge into the 10th house, but it's right on the cusp there. And that means that
Mm-hmm.
is learning the energy of Cancer when it's at 0 degrees like that, or when the first degree. And Mercury being the thought process, and it's all of those third house topics, but it's also like the messenger of the gods and like how we communicate and can become, you can see teachers in that house of groups. But it's also like learning how to wield that very watery, emotion-based Cancer energy. And you may
Yeah.
attract groups of people who all exhibit those characteristics,
Mm-hmm.
of like very emotion-based things, but it's also a very nurturing sign. So some of the challenges that you experience over a lifetime may be around that issue of nurturing.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're having to focus so much on that, it's like taking up your whole thought process, or the big challenges and restrictions and constrictions. And, Saturn, I call him the drill sergeant. It's like, gotta get through the obstacle course before you get the rewards, versus Jupiter, who likes to just hand out all the candy. And like,
Yeah.
yeah, so having that there has something to do with gatherings of groups or clubs and associations. It could also be like social media. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, but again, remember how I was saying the fifth house of pleasure and creativity and these offspring, you've got Saturn over here looking over across the earth. And Saturn is mastery over time. It's got that late bloomer vibe. And so it's
Mm.
something that's like slow and steady wins the race. It's the sea goat, so it goes all the way from the depths of the ocean up to the top of the mountain, but it's
Mhm.
not fast vibe. So this is something learned through trial and error and challenges and obstacles. Um, but it can definitely become like a mastery vibe in the realm of groups of people. And it's also, just 4 degrees from Mercury. So all of those things we were talking about, like the intellect and writing and teaching and communication of all kinds. It could be even good for like webinars or teaching online and things like that, especially since you have
Mm-hmm.
the Aquarius. And probably in the deeper realms since you have your third house in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got the Mars there, which is the other challenging one. Mars, instead of like the obstacles and things, it could be like either through anger or actions, like making mistake type actions, or even like groups that become aggressive towards you or something like that. Or you just exhaust yourself, like I say, because of trying to nurture groups of people or other people or even friend groups, and kind of giving away all of your your energy that way. Um, but it could be very like you know, I hate to say like life at the party because it's not a party vibe in that house, but it's like you could hold a lot of energy when you walk into a room kind of thing. It could be
Yeah.
okay. Kelli has arrived, that kind of thing. But definitely in that emotion-based energy of Cancer.
Mm-hmm.
To the 12th house, opposing the sixth. These are the kind of least fun houses. The 12th is how we suffer. It's the house of trauma and loss. It's self-undoing, so ways we self-sabotage. It's also the house of like institutions. So sometimes when you see a buildup of planets there, there could be like a lot of traumas over the lifetime, or somebody either ends up in an institution like a hospital or psych,
Mm-hmm.
or they end up like working in those realms later in life, or maybe sometimes a parent who's like involved with that. It's also the house of secrets, and the one fun one that I really love is it's the house of the collective unconscious. So it's like mysteries and the unknown, but also the collective unconscious. And so you have your sign of Leo there, which is I call it Leo the show off sign. It's the one that loves to be the center of attention. Um, but it's in that house of like confinement.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of an interesting thing because you have your sun up here in the public house.
Right.
So sometimes when I see that, it's like this person has a lot of visibility naturally. Almost they don't want it though. It's like a cringe moment of like, oh, why
Mm.
in front of everybody? Or you seek it and want it, or it comes naturally to you because your south node's up there too. And then there's something about self-undoing or self-sabotaging or that kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
so just because they're square by sign too is kind of like an interesting interplay. So when we look at your sun lines, we'll have to remember that that's the ruler of your 12th house.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is like trauma, loss, or this kind of like troubling stuff, the sun lines are linked to that.
Mm.
And you also have, like we are talking about, the way that these planets are looking at each other across the year. I'll just keep going with my analogy. Um,
Yeah.
there are the different ways that they're looking. It's all just geometry. I'm sure you're familiar, but it's like, the opposition, like I said, is 180. So it's across the circle. We have this little symbol. Then we've got the square, which is like a 90-degree angle. Add two of those together, you get the square shape. So that's like a challenge to overcome. There's some kind of tension, but it's a little more easily resolved than the tug of war. Uh,
Mm.
then you have the supportive energy of the sextile, and it's kind of like it's supportive, just there for you, but it's not forcing anything. Like it's just a
Mm.
supportive vibe. And it's almost like optional, like grab the brass ring kind of thing. Um,
Mm.
the trine, which is 120 degrees, is like a guaranteed flow of energy. There's no like
Mm-hmm.
valve. So people who think of trines as like really beneficial, and they can be, but it also can be like the people who end up really arrogant or the people who end up entitled and stuff, because that, especially if it's very lucky, like they don't realize their privilege or they're stepping all over
Mm.
people, expecting too many things from, that kind of stuff. So it can be a really fortunate one, but can also just be like, foot on the gas, flooring it kind of thing.
Ah.
Um, and then we have the conjunction when we were talking about like they're hugging, there's like right on top of each other, just a couple of degrees apart or a degree apart. That one's totally like it's like just fully expressing the energy of whatever it is. So when you have the midheaven there on the sun, this is like where you're like, sure, Kim, I'll be on your YouTube channel. Like you're like
Yeah.
definitely like I say, meant to have some kind of public visibility, but then it has the sun has a square to the ascendant and the descendant, and in opposition to the IC, like we were talking about with Neptune.
Yeah.
And with your Jupiter, even though it's like your benefic, your greater benefic, it also squares to the nodes and in opposition to the ascendant. So it's almost like maybe the ascendant has a hard time manifesting the luck of Jupiter sometimes just because it's opposing it. Remember, it's like that tug of war.
Mm.
So when we get over and we see, oh, but you're right on a Jupiter line and you're close to a Sun MC line, it also comes with challenges just because of the configuration of your chart. So if I were a TikTok astrologer, I'd be like, run to your sun line, run to your Jupiter line. But we have to remember that this is completely and utterly tied to your own natal chart. And
Yes.
like I say, anchored into these four angles. So we've got the ascendant, outward personality. It's also things that happen to you. Like especially on those lines. Remember how I was saying I could see like more predictive on this about how things play out. There's ascendant lines where things actually happen to you versus where they happen maybe internally or at your home or something like that. And then midheaven is really to do with career and public life. And then the descendant is bringing in other people and relating to other people and the rapport you have with other people. Okay, any questions before I jump over to the map?
No, but I have just already gained so much from this conversation. So this is woo.
Okay. I told you I was going to keep going. So.
Wonderful.
Okay, I'm going to switch over to another program. I love it. It's called Zeus. It's out of Eastern Europe, and it's my dream come true. It only came out of beta last year, and I've pretty much entirely switched over to using it for the mapping because it's amazing. And a few of us astrocartographers are now like really in direct contact with the developer, and he's so cool. He like, adds features and does all kinds of things like that. So it's amazing. It is definitely for professionals though, so don't run out and buy Zeus unless you want to end up in a puddle of your own tears because it's like very technical.
Yeah, you're not gonna get it.
You know all of everything what it means. You're not gonna get much out of it. But it's a wonderful interface. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is start off at home. Okay, and so we can see the birthplace on the map. And then if I go all the way out, and it's gonna probably, there we go. Be a little bit slower now that I'm doing this. Actually, I'll close Astragal. Maybe that'll speed it up. Okay. So what we're looking at is the same that we just went through your natal chart down here, little different visual format because it's different software. Up here, look at the relocated chart. So what I was talking about, the signs spinning and then the planets on those degrees moving along with it. Here's what it looks like if you keep your eye on the top left relocated chart and your birth. But especially when I move you like east to west, you can see that things start really changing. When I go south, it doesn't change as drastically. I have to get like really far south in America.
Yeah.
But east to west, you can see it's very drastic differences. So if you had been born in India, this is what your birth chart would have looked like at that exact same time, adjusting the time zone. You know, if you'd been born in Australia, it would have been like this, or New Zealand, or if you'd been in South Africa, or you know, Algeria, or something like that. So that's something I'm keeping a close eye on when looking for, you know, where we can optimize your energy. This is all your energy, by the way. So again, we're going to talk about remote activation. You exist everywhere. And sometimes when we see things like this, like, oh, your Venus descending is like kind of mostly out in the ocean. There's a couple of things about that. One, because a Venus descending can be a really nice place to meet a potential romantic partner or even just like really good friends and things like that. And it's the ruler of your second house. A couple of different things. I like to use the analogy of a solar eclipse. So if I were on this line, like literally underneath this line on my map, and it was a solar eclipse, it's not a perfect analogy because it's different. Like the sun radiates light, whereas the other planets are just reflecting it, but they're actually more like giving gravity. So if you have ever been in the path of totality of a solar eclipse, like maybe like in the US when we had that big one last year, you'll see the moon cover the sun and the sky will go dark and it's literally totality. If you're not that close in, you know, it could still it can still like seem like a sliver. You could still see it and the sky still darkens a little bit. And then you get farther and farther away and you won't really be able to notice it anymore. And so,
Yeah.
you know, for me, like about 250 miles, you can really feel like the totality. And then it
Mm,
eases off from
mhm.
there. But some people, especially if they're sensitive, can feel it all the way up to like, about 600 miles, about 900 kilometers. Um, but it'll be more subtle, or you'd have to be kind of tuned in to notice the effect. So not quite, mainland Portugal, but what's interesting here is you do have like, see these lines. So one thing I tell people is zoom in on your map because there's lots of little interesting islands. Like this is called the Azores. It's like the Hawaii of Europe. You have a lot going on over there.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful, beautiful group of islands, and it's part of Portugal. So you actually are in range of Venus there. You've also got your descending Chiron line. A lot of people tell me they meet like their best friend or like their partner who really heals a lot of their earlier wounds on that line. If they meet him earlier in life, though, they might be the wounder. um, then you've got Uranus on the ascendant. So it's more like a fun, like vacation vibe here because
Mm,
it's really hard to settle on Uranus lines unless you're like a tech founder or an inventor or really
mm.
that, you know,
Right.
using that zany Uranus energy. But you do have Uranus in your second house. So something about that could be highlighting and activating your second house of money. It's also Mars on the MC. So this wouldn't be like comfortable necessarily to live here just because you'd have to be using so much Mars energy. Otherwise it builds up in you and becomes like anxiety and
Mm.
stuff. I mean, if you were like an MMA fighter, this would be like awesome. Uh, but if you're just like, I mostly sit at my desk doing work and my, whatever,
Nah.
it's
Right.
untenable. But you can see here that that means that the MC and Mars are very close to one another in this location. So if I
Ah.
go to like Horta, you can see that those are conjuncting each other in your relocated chart here.
Mm.
And so that's how that plays out. And it moves your sun out of the 10th over to the ninth house of spirituality with your south node and that kind of thing. So it reconfigures things. What I don't love about it, the moon in the 12th, but it's not actually bad. It could be really good for like channeling, or
Mm.
connecting to the other side, that collective unconscious, the upside down kind of thing. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's one interesting thing, more with like along the realm of like psychic gifts and things like that. But yeah, Venus descending. So, what I say about remote activation too, if you're not going to plan to go here anytime soon, is like go on. My favorite hot tip is go on YouTube and you search up 4K walking tour Azores. And, then there's like all these awesome nerds all around the world who travel around and whatever they're doing, if they're digital nomads, I have no idea. They're taking like cameras and gimbals and just walking around cities all around the world. You can visit any
Mm.
place and you just hear the ambient sound. This is a great way to remotely activate your own lines. So when
Mm.
you find these lines, even if you can't go, getting it into your consciousness can be a wonderful way to like actually draw in some of that energy of yours. Um, Now, I'm going to zoom back out before we get into any more specific locations, but that was just kind of like a tip of like, if you're worried about it being in the ocean, sometimes it is actually close enough to a shore that it's active there. Like your Venus descending is active in Ireland. Maybe you need
Venus descendant is active in Ireland.
your Venus descendant is totally active all across Ireland.
I have Irish heritage. It's one of the places I haven't visited, and it's in like the top 5 places that I would like to go at some point when I start traveling again. So
Yep, totally. That would be certainly in range there. I think you even get a little close
interesting.
to these guys too.
Yeah.
Uh, So definitely, and maybe even in a little smidge you would get over in the UK as well.
Hmm.
So that's one thing, is just like knowing that you don't have to be exactly smack on the line. And sometimes like in your case where you have a bunch of angular planets, it's kind of better not to make everything angular because your natal chart is always going to remain the main imprint. And
Hmm.
everything else is interacting with that main imprint from the time of birth. It doesn't erase your birth chart to relocate. What I consider this to be is more like setting up a transit. And the longer you
Yeah.
stay there, it starts really getting more deeply imprinted. Uh,
Yeah.
and so, especially after like Mars hits each house, which takes about 2.5 years, it really activates those houses and it becomes like a permanent transit to your birth chart the longer you stay. So like when
Ah.
you've been living there 7 years, your relocated chart, even though it's not very different from your birth chart, because it's not very far east of your birthplace. It gets more deeply imprinted the longer you stay. So you've been there kind of like the length of time of a Saturn square, that certainly would be like sinking in at that point. The other thing to look at is we have other lines to add in. So we have another school of thought called local space. So
Yeah.
planetary directions. So where your natal birth chart being wrapped around the sphere of the globe and breaking into those four lines for the four angles is astrocartography, which is a specific technique. It's also called astromapping. It's been called many things throughout history. A guy named Jim Lewis in the 70s and 80s coined that term. And that's why we call it that now. It's just got popular, but it used to actually be called astromapping, which I kind of prefer.
Yeah.
But he had to come up with a new name because the other one was trademarked. So anyway, this is another school of thought called planetary direction or local space. And instead of being wrapped around the globe, it's based on the horizon line. So which direction the planets were headed at the time and location of birth. So if I go back to your birthplace, we can see them all shooting out of your birthplace. So you can start to see you have energy going in a lot of places, even if you don't, like realize it at first glance when you just see those astrocartography lines. So it looks like, these lines are going both ways. So like this spirit line looks like it's going, shooting out both ways on the birth chart, but it's really just going one way, the planetary direction, and then circling back. So these are actually like global in scale as well. And you can see that they go all around, but that's just a different layer on top of it. So you also have like Ireland is kind of standing out because you've also got you got a little Pluto, but you also have another Venus line right there. So those are in range of Ireland as well. So that kind of stood out to me because your Venus descending is in range. Then remember we talked about the aspects and how we're looking at each other across the proverbial yurt. We can turn those on and see them as well. So now we can see what else is going on in those areas. I consider planetary lines to be tier 1 energy, like the strongest. It's going to be the most potent energy. Local space and aspects I consider to be tier 2. So like not as strong, but definitely influential. I used to be pretty skeptical about local space, but over the years, observing different people and myself all around the world, they are certainly felt definitely influential. And then we add on the final layer, and these are paran lines, which I'll explain in a second. But now you can see, like even in Ireland, you have like a ton going on. In mainland Europe, even though at first glance it doesn't look like there's a lot of lines going. So we'll get into. I just want to show where you're living now. A little bit about that since you had a lot in your notes about that. Maybe you won't be able to like relocate anytime soon, maybe in the next few years or something. So I'm going to go over here now. See if I can get zeroed in. So you're like right in this area here. I'm going to not dox you, but okay.
Yeah, Virginia.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the closest line is actually your Jupiter descending line. You can see that one. This is actually just 131 miles, 212K. And then you've got a local space line, which is a node line and a fortune line. And then, and remembering in your chart, Jupiter's squaring the node. So kind of like a mixed bag. You got your lucky planet there, but he's got some squares to the nodes. And there's some other, challenges to Jupiter. Usually when Jupiter gets challenged, it can be like an abundance wound. Or it can be like, specifically for your chart, because you have it in the 7th and it's conjunct a descendant, it can be almost like over relying on other people to like, be the luck or something like that, or just like wanting that person to bring the luck to you. So that's maybe where the square can get resolved of just like, hey, this is my chart. I've got this Jupiter energy, you know what I mean? Then the other little bit of a challenging thing going on is to see how these two are hanging out together. That's because they're opposing each other in your natal chart. But that sun up in the 10th is opposing the Neptune down there. So when I relocate your chart to Virginia Beach, you can see your chart's almost exactly the same. The only thing that changes are the angle degrees by a little bit because it's pretty close to the same where your birthplace is on a different uh, latitude. So no, longitude. I always mix it up. Latitude, latitude. It goes right. I have to always think about it. Okay, so remember how I was saying like Neptune on the IC, it can be sometimes like irritating circumstances around real estate. Like I said, it could be the place to be feel spiritually connected, but it can also maybe be get involved with like, you know, either a spiritual community, sometimes cults. It's not necessarily the most financially lucky thing because Neptune doesn't care about material resources. So it can be, you know, like you were saying, you know, you weren't to focus on the spiritual abundance, I mean the financial abundance. You got the spiritual abundance there, but the financial isn't there. Uh,
No.
yeah, and even though that it's Jupiter, that would kind of like come through other people versus, you know, through like your active like day job kind of thing.
Right.
The good news about that is though, this could be a great placement for clients. So doing like you're thinking about doing like readings and things like that, especially in that spiritual realm,
Mm.
can actually be really well supported. And just kind of thinking about how to resolve that square with the nodes, if you feel like that's the right direction for you and you feel like that's heading toward the north node, that helps resolve that tension and might bring more of those Jupiter benefits. Versus like if you're working for like the corporate, you know, for the health insurance and kind of feeling like it's soul sucking and it's not, you know, matching the node energy kind of thing.
Hmm.
That, you know, can resolve that tension feeling about it. And you do have a lot of fortune there too. So like I say, it's a bit of a mixed bag, like you know, but it actually isn't a terrible place to grow the wealth, but the lot of fortune line is kind of like optional that way. It's like you gotta
Mm.
activate it.
You got
Um,
to activate it.
yeah. So I turn on the aspects. You don't have any aspects like super close or in range of that area.
Okay.
You have a couple local space off here, but these are the two local space. And then this is certainly in range, this whole little setup here of the Neptune and the sun. You can see they're not very far away.
Hmm.
Um, so it's just kind of an interesting setup because, you know, your lucky abundance planet is squaring these nodes, and then your sun wants to shine, but then the south node is like trying to make it shine out through like the core of the inner foundation. So it's really, it's almost like a heal thyself vibe
Mm.
to really activate the abundance.
Hmm.
Yeah, like I say, you're kind of just like when you're in these areas, I like to tell people you're just walking into that energy. So, you know, how you experience it can be a lot about like awareness of it. So like, even if I
Hmm.
know I'm going to, you know, one of my Jupiter lines, I'm sitting on one of my Jupiter lines right now here in France, beautiful France. I have a Jupiter square in Chiron, which is a spiritual wound and an abundance wound as well. So it's like, I know that those issues are going to come up for me when I go to Jupiter. Even though
Yeah.
Jupiter's my chart ruler and it's sitting in the ninth and it has like all these other nice things and it's trining Venus, but it's going to bring up Chiron issues about like wound.
Mm.
And it's a good place to just process those. Otherwise, it just kind of comes at you and you're not realizing where it's coming from. So like,
Yeah.
you know, awareness just helps use that energy instead of it just kind of like using you, not using you, but you know, just coming at you. So like, why can't you know it?
Right.
Okay, so like that's what's going on there. And then it also actually, I shouldn't have zoomed out quite so quickly. Since you don't have the any aspects to super close, I'm gonna turn that off, but I do want to show you your paran lines. Um, this isn't an exact example because this is a local space line. But when you see two
Hmm.
planet lines crossing like that, it forms what we call a paran line at
Okay.
same latitude, and that goes all the way around the globe. So at the crossing, it's super strong. And then like the other side of the world, you get like a bit of a vibe of that same energy. So somewhere around the world, you have the closest that you have to Virginia Beach, you have Saturn squaring, I mean, crossing with Uranus. So it's Saturn on your descendant crossing with Uranus on your midheaven, somewhere around. And that's
Oh,
the closest paran you've got. And it can be like it could be, you know how like Saturn brings constriction and then
yeah.
Uranus brings those sudden things or sudden erratic changes. So it's got that like, and Saturn being on the descendant, it can bring it through other people. Like the challenges are coming through other people and it may affect your career, is how I read that. just because Uranus is up on the midheaven on that paran. And the longer you stay, like I don't even really start to feel paran lines for like about a month. I have some people who are more sensitive and they like feel it right away, but um when you've been there for like 7 years, these will get more and more loud, even though they're tier 3 and a little more subtle. I had some clients where they only have paran lines, they don't have anything else going on, and they feel those like the most intensely. And then this one's a little, I don't do a super wide orb of these, but I do about 60 miles. So this one's just in range here too. You have Mercury on the descendant crossing with Chiron on the IC. So Mercury could be that messenger of the gods, thinking, intellect, communication, crossing with Chiron on the IC being your home and inner foundation, that kind of thing. Um, it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't mean like a square. It doesn't mean like an opposition. It just means those two energies are at play, like hanging out with each other somewhere around the world. And they're kind of vibing like a standing wave on the same latitude. So neither of these are particularly comfortable parans. This one can be really good though, if you kind of think about, it can be wounding for the home life. But it can also be like, if you flip that energy a little bit, it can be good for working in healing from home. Because Chiron, remember that can be a healer, and it could be that like mentor, it could be the teacher, it could be the help the person integrate their wounds. And Mercury is patience, the messenger of the gods, communicating and teaching, and like, and that's in the seventh house on the descendant on that paran. So if you use that energy for helping other people with their wounds, that can actually be a great way to channel that out and not have it come back to you. But yeah, and then the same with Saturn, like Saturn, if it's coming at you, it feels like restriction and through other people affecting your career. But it could also be you becoming masterful in relating to other people regarding metaphysics. Because remember that Uranus rules metaphysics and it's on your midheaven in that paran line. And you also have in your money house. So like I always think of it as every topic is on a spectrum. So
it has a shadow side and then the
yeah. And I've had traumas and stuff. I'm not saying people it's like your fault if you don't notice or something. I'm just saying if you're walking in community, there's a way to like work with it. It's like I say, it's like really kind of like Doctor Strange. If you ever saw that movie, it's like it was all about Adam, and then he went and learned how to work with energy, and it actually becomes really kind of like a fun challenge.
Let me ask you a question right now at this juncture. If I were to say that I suddenly became capable through different circumstances and means to relocate. When you look at this, is this like a situation where you'd go, if you have any way to relocate, you definitely need to relocate? Or do you look at it and you go, this is manageable?
Your situation, especially with working in spirituality and healing and things like that, is manageable.
Okay.
Even though you have those squares and things like that, I find those to be resolvable. And then you have the opportunity to resolve this opposition here. We're working with that. And like, you have the sun on the midheaven in your natal promise. So like that's active there. You've got some interesting good things going. And it's also within a little range. Like these lines are kind of light. So it may be that you were just not hitting the nose on that node because you're sitting right on a node line. So there is like it needs to express what that node wants to express versus that's where it kind of comes in and feels like dissonance, feels like friction versus feeling like ease. When it's not.
So the node line you'd say is probably the most prominent thing that I could look into how I'm going to express it or resolve it.
Yeah, because it's so close to where you are, and it's aspecting Jupiter.
Yeah.
And
it's squaring, it's in a square.
It's co-present with Neptune also, which is right there. And then it's not terribly far off of like your midheaven, like as far as an opposition. So I think it's doable. It's just like going to take that awareness. And also, I'm saying specifically working in the spiritual realm. It's necessarily, I don't think going to be like always going to be the most financially abundant because there's no Venus in play. I remember Venus is in charge of your second. So I think it's workable, but it's not going to be like your most
phenomenal from a financial standpoint.
Yeah. You also,
Manageable, but it's not like abundance
yeah, it's
financially.
not ease of
Yeah.
abundance, let's say that.
Easy abundance, right?
Yeah.
For sure,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, it's not like you're not like, because like when I see somebody living on like a Pluto IC or Pluto MC or something, which can be very intense and bring very intense life experiences, and it's like crossing with Saturn or something, I'm like, I know that it's going to be an intense call because they're having real problems. Like it's going to be
Yeah.
like a really bad story that I'm hearing, and it's not like that when I look at where you're living.
Mm. Okay, that's helpful.
And then I know you had a fun little, you posted on threads about you going kind of viral on TikTok, posting about Puerto Rico,
Yeah.
which is super interesting because you have a few things going there. Dominican is like right on that Jupiter descendant. And like we said, you don't have to be exactly right on it. You're certainly in range of that Jupiter,
Hmm.
which likes to expand things and especially as yours on the descendant, so coming through other people. And then you have a node line. So you have the south node on the MC, that's right up here, going right through
Mm.
Puerto. And then you also have a moon on the ascendant. So that little moon on your ascendant over here is very close to Puerto Rico. So that could be
Mm.
kind of fun. The other thing to any descending line is, I talked about your Venus descending being in play over there in like the Azores and Ireland, but that
Yeah.
could be any descendant line to bring in people. So, a lot of
Mm.
their partners on Jupiter descending, or a lot of people meet their partner on like even a Mercury descending or something because the descendant is other people. Um,
Yeah.
I also think, it could be because it's Pisces, particularly because he's in his home sign, Jupiter is. It's not a terrible place to meet people. So even like sometimes, if you want to set in like a dating app or just even just like troll around, looking like right on your Jupiter line here, like, Philly and New York and that kind of stuff. Um,
Ah.
you can set your location to those places, even Montreal, Ottawa, that kind of stuff. You want to get a Canadian, get out of Dodge, go join
Well,
that.
I'm telling you, there was never a time in I was born on, in a port city to Sarnia, Ontario, Canada. And so I grew up at a time when like you didn't need a passport and we used to go to Canada on pretty regularly or whatever. But back then it wasn't like it was just like, oh, Canada, they were our neighbor. But it wasn't like
Yeah.
now I'm like what I wouldn't give.
Well, we Canadian, yeah.
Right.
Funny. It's not as easy to settle up there like Quebec City and all that because of these. Uranus is just notoriously difficult to settle on because everything is constantly changing. But it could
Yeah.
be really, but it like, could be interesting to meet somebody suddenly.
Hmm.
Um, and then if I kind of zoom out, just looking at the US, something else that stands out is your spirit line on the MC through this kind of region of the Midwest.
Hmm.
Local space, like again, I wouldn't necessarily pick right here, and not that you'd want to live in like rural Missouri corner of like Oklahoma there anyway. But
Yeah.
like Minnesota could be a kind of interesting, so kind of like on that spirit line, because remember the spirit you have in the ninth house, but it's on the MC there. So if we relocate even to like Chicago.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had a couple of connections with Chicago recently, like people that,
Yeah,
just on TikTok or whatever that I've talked to
yeah,
quite a bit. I mean, not romantic, but just like generally
it's
just
connecting.
kind of
Yeah,
like my eye has been like, Chicago, kind of one of those things.
totally,
Yeah.
because you've got Jupiter in your seventh house, so meeting people comes easily through Jupiter, and you got a Jupiter local space direction line there, and then you also have your ascendant there. People love being on this ascendant local space line, that planetary
Mm,
direction, because it's like expressing your ascendant. It feels very authentic. It feels really good, and then people also, like I said, really love their spirit lines. So it's still in range. It's not super duper close, but it's still in range of that Chicago area for sure. And
yeah.
then if we're on other things, and also I personally just love Chicago. I think it's great. Um, I lived there for a few years. It's wonderful. So you got Saturn on the descendant. Remember how you have Saturn on the descendant now? But here it's crossing with Venus on the lower, on the IC instead of
Yeah.
Chiron. So
Yeah.
that's a lot softer. It also could bring like a permanent type relationship.
Relationship.
Yeah, because it's got, so it adds a little Venus where you don't have Venus where you are now, but also with Saturn, so it brings some seriousness to it. And sometimes I'll see that as There could be a little delay to it because of Saturn, but it also could be permanency kind of thing. Uh,
Mm,
and then I really like this other parent line of, Mercury on so you kind of swap out like harder, different, more difficult things of Uranus and Chiron with easier things because you're adding a bunch of Venus up there.
yeah.
So I do like that. And then if we turn on the aspects, getting all the layers going, you do have like Saturn trining the descendant. And then you also have
Mm,
Pluto trining the midheaven. So, you know, this could be a little intense, but it could be good for career. Like if you're wanting that boost to career, keep remotely activating it.
yeah.
Like you say, just like chatting to people. Um, this right here, this line, it can bring like it's just serious people. It can bring the elders.
Mm,
It can bring just people who are like more serious, not the party people, that's for sure.
yeah.
Um, and then
Also, what's interesting, you said Minnesota, and that's where, I'm not connected directly, but like Adam Ellenboss and Nightlight Astrology, that's who has been like, I
totally
took his first year and everything. And when I got connected to him, not like relationally, but like as far as his content,
yeah.
it definitely has been very impactful for me and really positive, and kind of took my own astrology study to a whole different level. So, and that happened back in 2023 when I got connected to their content online. So that's just interesting. They're in Minnesota.
Oh, I mean, you do have this Mercury trying the descendant right there. So like that's a teacher
Yeah,
learning vibe for sure. I see a lot of people
right.
do classes or college or whatever on Mercury type lines like that. And then
Yeah,
you have the moon trining the MC. So that can be good for like developing career stuff for sure. Uh,
yeah,
yeah, that's great. And then you have, and it's right on that spirit line. That
yeah.
spirit MC. It's like right there, like just west of Minneapolis. And
That's so neat.
yeah, super cool. And then you have some local space too. So another Mercury, and then you've also this Sirius Saturn. Like I said, bringing the elders, bringing the serious people, bringing the teachers, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. You also have Venus trining the ascendant not too far, so maybe a trip to Minnesota wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Listen, no, I have actually been drawn to Minnesota from when I kind of send out my consciousness to like where would I go, and Minnesota has popped up a few times for me before that. So that's just interesting. Yeah.
Clear line right there. I mean, those can be underrated. Like I don't see a lot of people talking about those, but I find them to be like people talk about those places.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's really Chicago's still very close to your sun midheaven. Hold on, I did the wrong button here. Beep. There we go. Yeah, so it's not terribly close, I guess, but it's still a whiff of in range. So that Chicago area is interesting. Minnesota's interesting.
Yeah.
Mixed bag over here, this West Coast.
Yeah.
Um, like lovely Venus MC. It's just
Yeah.
not to live because of this Uranus on the IC. Uranus, like I keep saying, Uranus is hard to settle on. Uranus on the IC is the absolute hardest. Because
Uh,
like I don't know if you've ever spent time there or tried to like live there or something. People
I lived in California as a child.
ah
And we loved it there.
yeah.
But my mother didn't, and so she ended up moving us back to Michigan when I was 10 years old. Suddenly, like we literally had no intention to move, and it was a very rapid thing. We went out, we made a trip for a family reunion. My mother got very activated about going back to Michigan, and we ended up moving.
That's when the house move, yeah.
And we moved a lot when we lived in that area because my father was a welder and pipe fitter by trade. So his job was constantly being impacted, but like he made great money, but he
Yeah,
also constantly got laid off. And my mom just got tired of that cycle. And he
yeah.
wasn't around a lot because he was literally working so
Interesting.
many hours. It was really, I mean, it was a very lucrative, but it was very volatile at the same time.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I can see why you loved it because you got the Venus MC there. But this,
Yeah.
like I say, that is, people tell me all the time on those lines, like, I keep moving, I have to change my apartment, or my electricity, goes out. I have to
Yeah.
like constant erratic things, sudden moves. Like that's just
Yes.
the vibe. That's the vibe of that line. It can be super fun for just like a vacation.
Yes.
Um, now it is in your second house. So, and with the second house ruler on the MC over there, this can be a great place for you to pick up clients.
So I've had through threads, I've done one reading for, this was just like last month. I did a reading for somebody out in LA, but I have had a collaboration connection that I developed with the arts. So it's a poetry collaboration
Right.
with a music producer who's in LA.
Love it.
And I had a comedian. He's not like well known, but he works the circuit there, and he's pretty well known in the Bay Area. And he's also like a professional TV writer. Has reached out to me multiple times, not to do work with me, but to encourage me to keep writing. So
That's
isn't that interesting? Because, with Venus MC, and I felt like, yeah, I knew about that line, but of course I did not know about the Uranus line. So I was always like, should I go back to the West Coast? Should I go back? Because there was such a strong impression from childhood.
gosh.
This is very
Yeah.
helpful
Yeah.
to hear that. And then, yeah, I recently, just this week, had a very like 6 hour all day conversation with another spiritual practitioner, and he's in LA, and we were just like mutually exchanging, basically kind of like exchanging a reading with each other.
Look at that. I mean, because you had the sun trining the descendant right through LA
Yeah.
there. So it's
I'm
like,
sorry about my dog has been,
oh,
speaking of
it's not-
Uranus being, speaking of my Aquarius dog and
it's
Uranus being
so-
activated.
He's like, I heard Uranus MC.
Don't be so literal, Sid.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I don't want to interrupt, but I
I
just
love it when
wanted
the
to get
pets
into
join.
feedback.
Sometimes we have like a little cat just like watching the whole time. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you have the Neptune on the ascendant. That's even like you're saying, music and the arts and things like that, as well as being under all those things. So love it. Actually, I think we're getting close to the end just because of timing, and I kind of want to make this realistic.
Yes.
So let me just show you some other things overseas that,
Okay.
and I know you've traveled some overseas too. So if there's a certain place, just give me a shout of like if you want to check out a certain place. Um, but a lot of these, again, can be remotely activated.
Yeah.
So one that stood out to me, it's not even technically overseas for you, it's still part of the United States. You've got your Jupiter MC running right through Hawaii.
I was thinking about Hawaii all morning before this conversation, and it's come up at least 10 times in the last 7 days.
You have also the moon at play like the whole way through too. So the moon on the IC, which is really cozy, very cozy vibes. And then Jupiter on the
Yeah.
MC. So like if your chart relocated, I put you in Honolulu, you can see what that happens there. It moves that sun and everybody else down through here into
Yeah.
the first and second house and puts Jupiter right up on the MC in the 10th. So again,
Mm.
great for bringing in clients or relating to other people through like for career things.
Yeah.
It can also be, earning money through astrology too, because it puts that Mercury into your second as well. But yeah, you got a little vivacious Mars direction line going through, which can activate that 11th house because you have that natally in the 11th. Like group
Yeah.
things. Mercury in the ascendant's fantastic. You probably have mind whizzing pretty quickly. But yeah, all kind of nice things that make me smile over there in Hawaii. And
Mm.
fortune line on the descendant. Maybe you fall in love with a Hawaiian, who knows?
I'm okay with that.
Nice. Yeah, they would probably be a very positive type person. Okay, so then I'm gonna kind of zoom in here. Sorry, it's glitching a little bit. You have some interesting things in like Southeast Asia.
Mm.
You actually have a lot going right through Hong Kong, just so you know.
Oh, okay.
Like, too much. But yeah, if there was any kind of okay, now it's going off the rails. Sorry, I want to get to like a lot of lines going to get something glitchy. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So this whole area, including like Bali,
Mm.
you have like Jupiter. You got the node IC line all through there, and then even like everything in like Vietnam is in range here.
Hmm.
So, and then, like I said, just right through Hong Kong, you've got Jupiter, you got the moon on the descendant, and you've got a node line.
Mm,
So if, again, with like clientele, there's a lot of expats that live there or like immigrants and people from all over the world. It's a very global city. Um,
yeah,
so again, like target your own lines. You never know where opportunities come from, but if you know where your lines are, you can know
yeah,
like I say, in your mind, target them. I mean, like you say, like expand your consciousness, watch videos, follow people from those areas. If you have
hmm
like digital advertising, people who have businesses, I always tell them, if you're doing like meta advertising or something, target your own lines. You have uncanny
mm,
luck in those places. Um, you've also got a lot of fortune on the MC, not terribly far away, not terribly close, but pretty close. So that zone there is really interesting. Uh,
hmm
then you've got kind of a mixed bag, but kind of a little interesting energy over in Japan because it's one of
Yeah, I was
your
going to ask about Japan.
yeah, one of your Venus lines there, the ascending, right through the Hokkaido Island, the northern island, which can be really, it's very beautiful up there, like gorgeous. It's where they have all those like hot springs lodges and stuff. And I mean, they're all throughout, but it's like kind of it's where Japanese people go to like go see natural beauty and stuff.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then you have Uranus on the descendant and Chiron on the ascendant. So again, this is the money in your money house. This is your money ruler. This is what I jokingly call the billionaire line because I've had multiple clients meet and interact and become in relationships sometimes with billionaires on that line. So
Mm,
then with like, it's kind of an interesting energy when thinking about abundance. You don't necessarily even have to go there or anything like that. You can remotely just activate that energy in yourself. And maybe you'll suddenly start meeting people or people will follow you from that area. It's kind of interesting how it just like suddenly wakes it up when you focus on it.
yeah,
Or cook Japanese recipes at home and like practice some things like that, or listen to some music. Um,
yeah,
Focus on their artwork, watch some Japanese series on Netflix. They have some great stuff. Like just, you know, kind of interesting ways to just bring it into your consciousness. I like to follow on like Instagram, like the tourism office or beautiful hotels, or photographers in that area so that I see beautiful images of places on my lines just to keep it.
yeah.
And then like, you know, in places that you've been, like I always collect jewelry. Like it doesn't have to be expensive.
Hmm
I'm wearing like 5 lines right now.
She said,
Different
I'm wearing 5 lines right now.
it's a great way to just activate your own energy by just getting little things that you can. It doesn't take anything to pack it in a suitcase, or you can order things on Etsy or whatever. Just like kind of interacting with that culture,
Yeah.
can warm up those lines for you. Any places you're curious about before we end the sesh?
Just I would like to have you show me Cyprus and Ethiopia because I lived there for a couple of years. Cyprus, Israel, and Ethiopia, anything in that, they're kind of all close to each
Very
other.
cool.
So
I've
just
also noticed
curious
like
about that.
Greece is kind of interesting for you as well.
Mm,
You've got the Jupiter IC with the moon. You've got a couple local space going through. It could be kind of interesting energy. And then Ethiopia, you have your Mercury descending and a Saturn descending going right through, as well as two local space. So remember the Chiron and Uranus are always traveling together. um,
yeah.
they're hanging out there as well. So this could be. I have like a lot of lifelong friends from my Mercury descendant. It's just like made
Mm.
an impression on me, the people I met there, because it's like connecting like through your mentality. Was it a group at all? Like was there some kind of group that you were dealing with?
Yeah. So I was actually making trips. When I lived in DC for a while in the late 90s, I lived there for almost 2 years, and we were making trips from DC. I made 2 trips from DC there. And I was working with a very like, speaking of cults, anyway, no, I was working with a very, that's not really fair, but very like niche group of Messianic Jews. And so we were doing humanitarian aid work among like the
Ah,
poorer Jewish communities, and
sure.
the most impoverished Jewish community, one of them was in Ethiopia for a very long time. So we were raising money for them, and then like delivering goods and things like that. And then that when we moved to Cyprus, it was for the specific purpose of being in proximity to both Israel and
Okay.
Ethiopia.
Ah, got it. Yeah. Yeah, I asked that because you have that, Saturn and Mercury in your 11th. So kind of be associated with some group
Yeah, it was
situation.
a community. Actually connected to community. It was very community connected. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Very interesting. So that's what you got going there. You have a node descending in range, and that's the closest one to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Again, those node lines, that one's your south node on the descendant. So if I relocate the chart, like Jerusalem, you can see that that puts it in the seventh. So that's really coming
Mm.
through other people for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and then it puts your malefics and stuff and Mercury up in the eighth, which is kind of interesting. It'll be probably a very
Mm-hmm.
similar chart over here in Cyprus. I think that's also the closest line to Cyprus. Well, you kind of, yeah, I think they're all almost equidistant. So you got this node is the closest one, and then you got the sun over here, as well as that Neptune is always hanging out with the sun. So those are
Mm-hmm.
interesting because it's like inverted a little bit from where you are now. These are
Mm.
the descendant and the ascendant instead of the midheaven and the IC. These
Oh,
guys
that's
are.
interesting that it's inverted from where I am now. Huh.
Yeah. What's interesting is you have a crossing. Remember I was saying those paran lines? So if I turn on the parans, you're going to see the multiple crossings form right there.
Yeah.
The Neptune crosses with the moon right there, and then the sun crosses with the moon. That means
Yeah.
these are supercharged in this area. So both Cyprus and Israel would be supercharged with all of these. So that puts them,
Yeah.
extends their range because they're like
Because
amplifying
there's
it.
so many of them crossing. Okay.
Yeah. So that's definitely probably why it got highlighted for you, just because of probably this crossing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you've just got, like I say, you got a lot going with Greece as well. And even parts of Turkey and things like that, Istanbul. This zone is kind of a hot zone for you as well. Um, Let me see what your aspects are for Cyprus and Israel too. So you got Mercury running through, and Saturn because they're always hanging out. So yeah, those are the
Because
two
they're
main.
always hanging out.
And so that's with those groups as well.
Yep.
Um, Jupiter squaring the ascendant and then Pluto trining the descendant. That's, remember I was saying that's kind of that analogy of like the billionaires or the powerful people, or at least intensely, like intense personality type people. Uh,
Yes. It was a very intense time of my life. It was probably almost, it was intense like this now, but in a completely different way. So, like, it's just interesting. Yeah. Okay. Good. I was just curious about that. That's
yeah,
helpful.
very cool. All right, well, where can
Awesome.
people find you online if they want to follow you? I know you're going to be doing astrology readings soon, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing a little bit here and there. I have so on Instagram, it's Golden Key Guidance, all one word. And that's also a WordPress site. I haven't really kept up that blog recently, but I was blogging quite a bit about astrology. But that is like where you can get my contact information and everything just on the Instagram one. And then the other one is Indigo Bone, which is more focused on the arts side of things and writing. And there's a WordPress for that. And I'm also on Instagram and Threads on that handle as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks so much for allowing me to publish your info to the world and
Yeah.
demo reading. And there's lots of free resources on my site. So if you can't afford a reading, tons of free stuff. All the lines are interpreted for you, kimmott.com, or you can book a reading. We'll do this for you. But thanks again, Kelly. I can't wait to hear the updates of how it's going with you.
Thank you so much, Kim. So much to reflect on. Have a great, great weekend and a wonderful rest of your, I guess you're going into the evening now. So,
I know the sun's coming down. I'll go take a golden hour walk now around this beautiful city in France that I'm on my Jupiter Venus crossing. So I'll
that's wonderful. I love France. I haven't been in many years, but I visited a couple of times. I love it there. So awesome. Have a great day.
thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.